Hello, everybody. We're going to get started. I'm going to ask my presenters to get ready with their computers, and we're going to be putting you on the spot shortly. So this is an alert to get back to your screen if you've stepped away. Everybody, welcome to the webinar space. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rebecca Livola, and on behalf of the whole webinar team, I welcome you to the World Bank's Forum on Agricultural Risk Management webinar series. Our webinar today is run in collaboration with the Platform for Agricultural Risk Management, or PARM. Today's topic is the study from PARM titled Informational Assessment of Agricultural Risk Management Information Systems. This webinar will be an occasion to discuss the findings of the study with the author, Alberto Garrido, and take part in the discussion facilitated by myself and joined by Agnes Atieng, who's an independent consultant, and she's going to be sharing her country experience from Uganda. Before we proceed, just want to do a little bit of logistics. I want to give you a tour of the webinar space. All of the participants, you are on mute, so if you need to connect with myself or someone else on the tech team, please send a question through the Q&A chat box feature. This can be found on the right-hand side of your WebEx screen. All of the participants, you have access to the PowerPoint presentation for this event, and we will be sharing that after the presentation as well. And you can navigate through the slides, so you can either go forward or backward as the presentation is going using the arrow keys on the top of your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share that recording after the webinar as well. We're going to have a presentation for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll have the remainder of the portion be focused on Q&A. So please be sending your questions throughout the webinar and use that chat feature or that Q&A feature. So our facilitator today and our introducer of the webinar is Jesus Anton. He's a senior program manager of PARM, and he's going to take it from here. So Jesus, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone attending this seminar. The Platform for Agricultural Risk Management, PARM, is a G20 initiative that is hosted in the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, and which is financed by the European Union, the government of Italy, the Agence Française de Développement, and the IFAD itself. And we work on mainstreaming agricultural risk management on policies and development and we are concentrating our work on 8 African countries in partnership with the African Union agency, NEPAD. Our work, as you can imagine, focuses on assessing the risks, the agricultural risks in these countries, and from there moving into identifying the right tools that cover the gaps in order to manage the risk by farmers, and then creating the capacities and knowledge management needs in these countries. And from the very beginning, from the work that PARM has been doing in these countries, the information has been key because it's the main ingredient for agricultural risk management, and particularly for the first phase, which is assessing the risk. And from this risk assessment phase, we have realized the strong needs, intense needs of information in order to do these risk assessments. It's also one of the main constraints when we try to manage risk, not only because of the availability of the information, but also because of the accessibility. And also we need to know what are the gaps and the information which is more rich and the one which is poorer, because normally the risk management concentrates on where there is more information. But not only in the risk assessment, also when we go into the specific tools, for instance, in Uganda, there has been already some demand in terms of investing on specific information tools, and we're working with a small financial institution, FIT Uganda, in order to incorporate risk management capacities into their mobile phone tools. So that's the context, and that's why from the very beginning we realized we need to make an investment in order to know how information systems are functioning, are existing now in the African countries in which we are working, and knowing also the strengths and weaknesses of these systems. In this context, PARM has been working with a multidisciplinary group of a team from CEIGRAM VISAVET, two different groups that are in two different universities in Madrid, in order to do the study that we are going to present today. And we have with us Alberto Garrido, which is the leader of the team that has developed this study, and will tell us what are the main results of this study. We're happy also to have the publication, and also that we are going to have a workshop on information systems, and this report is going to be a background report for this workshop that will take place on Tuesday, 31st of January next week. So just with not taking more time, let me introduce Alberto Garrido, which is Professor of Agricultural and Natural Resource Economics, and also vice-rector of the University Polytechnic of Madrid. And he, as I have said, is co-author of this study, and we'll have introduced it to the topic. Afterwards, we will have some discussions from Agnès Atiang. Agnès is an independent consultant that has worked with several institutions, including with IFAD PARM, but also with ARC and with FAO on risk management issues. She is from Uganda, and she will, I'm sure she will give a lot of insights on how, from the point of perspective of those who are using information systems for agricultural risk management. With this, I pass now the floor to Alberto to make his presentation.
Thank you. Please confirm that you're hearing me correctly and clearly. Someone?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can hear you just fine.
Excellent. I hope you can all see my first slide of the presentation, and I'll get on to it, indicating first that this study that took us 1.5 years to complete, and with that the support of PRM project, the platform that which was introduced by Jesus a few minutes ago. And also, we've relied a lot on the governments about which we will say a few words. So this has been teamwork, as Jesus said, in the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid and Complutense. It's been a team of mainly agricultural economists, agronomists, and experts in animal science. So you can see the list of people that participated, and there was quite a bit of knowledge involved in carrying out this project. The presentation, I will cover these topics. I want to give you just the main messages, the main conclusions, and a bit of some methodological approaches and the data sources that will be used. I must say it's been a demanding project in terms of defining the approach and the scope, and also trying to reach conclusions that are based on evidence. So searching for evidence has been the main part of the project, and then the second part has been interpreting that evidence in light of the main goal of the project. Okay, why information systems are crucial for agricultural risk management? Perhaps this is obvious, but agricultural risk management is a circular, never-ending process. Anywhere, in any situation, this process occurs and evolves, and allows both agents responsible of implementing this process and users to learn and to work better towards managing risk in agriculture. So starting at any point of the cycle implementation, you always want to do an assessment, evaluation, test, revision, policy, innovation. These are the main parts of of a process involved in agricultural risk management in any domain that has an impact on agriculture or rural environments. In a sense, what we want to test agricultural risk management are based on these items: who uses it, who benefits from it, how efficient they are in avoiding or mitigating impacts, to what extent you can reduce cognitive dissonance, that means wrong interpretation of risks, wrong causalities, and that's part of the system as well. Preparedness for disaster and crisis, recovery after disaster or crisis occurs, and of course, private sector innovation. To what extent agricultural risk management is also has also the private sector adding knowledge, instruments, services that can be purchased by the private sector, by those forming the target group of the policy. The potential of agricultural risk management rests primarily on this factor. First, the capacity to analyze historical data and facts. The capacity to relate processes. One example of this would be the capacity to relate climatic data with animal disease. And that's not so obvious, but many models studying epidemics of animals are based on climate models. So you need to have the capacity to relate these processes. And that's related to also the possibility to establish and discover causalities, the capacity to model processes, and the capacity to gauge probabilities. Finally, and the most difficult part is probably the capacity to evaluate the costs of events. Okay, so the scope of the study included 8 thematic blocks in 7 African countries. The blocks are in the table. First, meteorological and climate information. Secondly, satellite image information and communications. Prices of commodities and inputs. Production levels and yields and plant health. Animal and human health. Policies, socioeconomic and historical information. And the last one is an encompassing block that includes integrated systems of information. The study looked at the agricultural information systems for the 7 countries: Cabo Verde, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Niger, Senegal, and Uganda. We developed a benchmark. We needed some kind of model, and we call this benchmark of information systems. And we define the benchmark as the ideal agricultural risk management information system, which is a canonical system whose components, structure, and logic are defined based on best practice, knowledge, and experience. And this benchmark was developed in very detail so that we could identify its parts and also establish some kind of weights so that we could evaluate these parts differently. The components of the benchmark are all this list of items: primary data and variables, images, indicators, services, integrated systems, the institutional framework and capacity to monitor risks, and technical support and human capacity. The project did not cover in the same detail all these items. I must say that primarily the benchmark that we try to assess for the 7 countries was primarily related to the five first items. We didn't go in much detail into institutional framework and capacity and technical support and human capacity, although indirectly we could evaluate some of this too. So this slide provides a description of the methodological approach. At the bottom, we have the benchmark. The benchmark allowed us to do an information or to develop an information generation and assessment process that had three different sources. One, some algorithm that we developed to recover, retrieve information sources related to the countries and the blocks. We also carried out an academic literature, including real literature. And then we relied on local consultants that allowed us to check and confirm that our searches were correct, provided some consistency. And with that, we developed some kind of scores that I will present in a second about the different blocks and the different information systems. We tried to rely on all kinds of information. We did a lot of work at home, but we relied also a lot on the feedback from local consultants and from representatives of the different countries in the workshops that we organized to present our conclusions on our study. So with these 8 blocks in mind, the methodological approach included 6 steps. First, define the blocks and subblocks, define the assessment criterions, assign numerical scale to the criterions, weigh the values of the criterions, weigh the variables, and obtain preliminary calculations and final scores. With those final scores, we presented the results in some of the countries, not a lot of them, but in some of them, and we gathered feedback and corrected the results based on what we heard and what was the reaction and feedback from the national institutions and international institutions that attended those workshops. So, for example, block 1, methodological and climate information, we had 2 sub-blocks, climate data, soil data. Here you have, in a sense, one table that defines all the different variables and the attributes or criterions from which these variables were assessed. So, and then we find, or we define scores for different kinds of performance or quality of the data. So for each variable, we define an attribute or criterion. Those criterions were weighted in order to get a final score on it, and we define these variables. I must say that we did not assess one information system. We defined all possible information systems for all the different blocks that could provide something of value and information in all the eight blocks. So for some countries, we review up to 50, 60, or even 100 information systems. And from each one of those, we perform a similar analysis with these scores, these weighting factors in order to get some numbers and scores for the different blocks. You have here, for example, block number 3 that is related to prices of commodities and inputs, and timely access to information about markers, transportation, and input availability. And the weighting that we used for this particular block were coverage, decentralization, position of the information in the value chain, frequency of data, updating, length, accessibility, dissemination channels, diversification, and continuity of the data series. All these factors were used to assess the different variables defined in block 3. Now, as an example, Ethiopia, we analyze or assess up to 103 different information systems. We focus mostly on the national information systems, and we identified 39 different information systems for Ethiopia for the blocks. Now, each block was had some qualitative assessment. In order to come up with some of the scoring for each block for each country, say meteorology, say animal health, or plant health, or prices information, we perform a qualitative assessment that took into account first the complementarity across information systems, whether they provide complementary information, whether national systems are primary or they provide the most valuable information. We perform an assessment of each information system. We carried out an evaluation of those information systems with respect to the needs that are required to perform agricultural risk management. And then we did consultations with national expert officers, and we carried out and developed a matrix of witnesses and strengths for each sub-block of information. Finally, in order to get a final score for all information systems that were available for one particular country, we weighted the score of different blocks according to these weights. So you can see that the most important element in terms of score is block number 1.1, that included meteorological and climate information. The second one's production levels and yields. Then prices was the most important one. And then meteorological information, production levels and yields, and then cost of animal disease and risks of endemic and emerging diseases. Okay, now coming to the results of the study, we are aware that these numbers are too aggregated. They don't convey much information. I will make a few comments about these numbers. Here you can see the final scores with a maximum potential score of 100, and you have this evaluations that you have in front of you. Now, in terms of the different blocks, here we're not reporting any country in the graph, just the minimum score and the maximum score among the 7 countries. And here you have, you can get a sense on which areas have the strongest scores and the weakest scores as well. And there's some consistencies across all 7 countries. And here you can see that the worst scores are associated with the costs of animal disease and plant health. And the best scores are in prices information, and meteorological and climate data, and trade information as well. So if you can get a sense of where are the most important areas to improve and to build are related to animal and plant diseases, and that's something that we found across the 7 countries. Perhaps these areas are the ones that lack more information. These areas are the ones that are perhaps more difficult to follow and to monitor, and this is something that that all countries are aware of, but perhaps the information systems that are needed to have data and information that is useful for agricultural risk management are the ones that require more work and more development. In this table, you have all the scores of the different blocks for all countries, so you can get a comparison. As I said before, if you follow these lines, you can get some lines called plant health. You can see clearly the poorest area, poorest item, and costs of animal diseases as well. Okay, I now get into recommendations. The first recommendation is that information systems should be based on expertise, and that information systems should do or build on the areas in which they're most prepared to have the best information. We've seen some information systems that are too superficial but too broad in terms of the scope of their analysis, and that's creating integrated systems that look at various topics is perhaps the way to go, but it's probably much better to have some kind of a specialization. So, for example, we found climatic data in information systems that are not specialized in climate. So here, as you can imagine, it's probably better to build on experience and to get more narrower but more deeper knowledge and quality of information rather than focusing on too many aspects more superficially. So specialization is probably one way to go, and to invest in those information systems that are really prepared and equipped to have all personnel and computers and systems for recording, managing, and processing information in this way. It is also essential to increase the length of the time series and continuity in reporting. This is not common, unfortunately. We see good data sources that are discontinued, then resumed, and there are gaps in the series, and that's not too good to carry out good information systems. So it is important, it is essential that all information systems maintain and improve the collection of data and processing. Also, very often, these data are not accompanied by technical notes describing methodological quality check procedures and sampling aspects. For good information systems, you need to know what factors are behind the data that you can witness. Okay. Third, stimulate private-based initiatives on information systems and provide adequate regulatory protection. We believe that some of the best experiences that we found in the 7 countries are public-private partnerships. These public-private partnerships are very strong as finding what kind of information is the most valuable for the final users, for private individuals, and who are seeking to invest in agriculture risk management information delivery. So those are the ones that will deliver products and services that are of value to the final users, that are the farmers or the cooperatives or the traders or even consumers. So it is important to have some for-profit entities participating in these kind of systems, because they are the ones that are going to look and search for evaluating what are the best informations that can be made of use for the final users. Of course, data should be disaggregated at the most basic level. We've seen data sometimes too aggregated, and it's the way to go now that you can have very good technologies to report data, to have information at even a household level or at the most basic agro-ecological zones. That's one way to go. It's important that data are sufficiently disaggregated, although information system managers can provide information on more aggregate, based on more aggregate indicators. But the disaggregation of data is one way to go, and it's essential to do agricultural risk management at across all the agricultural areas in these countries. Finally, accessibility. The value of information is based on how accessible it is. Of course, data should be presented in functional web pages, primarily or ideally not in PDF formats, should be checked and consistent with other information organizations that are offering the same data, sometimes with a different kind of presentation or even format. Sometimes the data source of these two information systems is the same, but the data are provided differently. Finally, there's still a lot of use of local radios, TVs, newspapers, and even telephone SMS in order to disseminate information. So right now, the value of these dissemination channels that could be considered perhaps not too innovative, they're still very useful, and it's perhaps the best way to reach the most remote locations and most rural areas using local radios, TVs, newspapers, and SMS rather than functional web pages. I think this completes my my presentation. I thank you for your attention. I just made an effort to synthesize the most important messages, and I'm available for the rest of the webinar to respond to any question that you may have. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alberto, for that fantastic presentation. I have a couple questions myself, but before we get into the Q&A portion of the webinar, I'm going to give the floor to Agnes Atieng, who is going to speak about her country experience from Uganda. Agnes, I'm just going to get you off mute. Let's do a quick sound check. Can you say something?
Yes.
Agnes?
Hi, Rebecca.
Okay. Wonderful. I can hear you. So you have the floor, Agnes, and go ahead and share with us your experience. We're looking forward to hearing about it.
Thank you very much. From the Ugandan perspective, most of our farmers now realize the importance and the need for information. What we're aiming at is shifting farmers' mindset from subsistence farming to looking at farming as a business. And for that, you need information. You need information to be able to make the decisions on what to grow, when to grow, and how to manage your enterprise. And with the shift in that mindset and the need for information, there's also a need for a trusted source of information. That's something that's really coming out strong. So at least, for instance, the meteorological information is now available in several different languages, and most of our farmers get the meteorological information from the radio in their local language. However, the other information on, for instance, plant health or livestock disease management is mainly obtained from fellow farmers and extension staff. But in a country where the extension system is very weak, and right now we're going through another cycle of changing extension services and the entire extension system, so that aspect is still very weak. And the way farmers get information is really now reliant on experience. But the numerous outbreaks we've had shows that that is not working very well. So how are we going to enable farmers gain trusted information quicker, better, and access it more easily? But also it shows that if, with the mindset shift, if farmers are able to get that information in reasonable time, that means they can actually manage their risks better. So it's incumbent upon partners and government to set up systems, information systems that would meet the need of the farmer. Right now we can get price information very easily. It's just an SMS code to a particular company that is accessible across the nation for all farmers at a free cost. Meteorological information is also available, but when it comes to things like stocks, which the country needs for projecting food security, because right now we're facing a situation that we don't have information on the food stocks, current food stocks. That is also a problem. So if we're going to shift, we need an information system that works, that is integrated, that is trusted. So how do we meet the needs of the farmers? That is my question to the participants.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Agnes, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how you connect with farmers and how you get their feedback and what kind of informational systems they would be interested in. And maybe Alberto, you want to speak about this as well, if you have some insight.
Can I start?
Yeah.
Oh, please go ahead, Agnes.
Okay. For instance, I've had the privilege of working with farmers across most of the country doing food security assessments. And time and again, you find that even though they receive the weather information, they don't know how to utilize that information. Where do I get the seeds, the early maturing seeds, if you're telling me the rains are going to be poor? How do I plant them? What is going to change? Who's going to advise me on how to plant differently? And because they're not able to do that, they will use their traditional seeds. And with that, when the season fails, they tell you, you told us the rains were poor, but you didn't tell us where to get the improved seeds or the early maturing seeds. They're not even available on the market. Where do we get true seeds? Because some of the seeds that are in the market are fake. Without a proper information system on inputs, farmers are at a loss. So that's the information they give you. That feeds into a cycle of poor production and food insecurity, and then, it continues. That's the information across the country, whether you're looking at farmers in the dry areas or in the moisture areas in northwestern Uganda. Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alberto.
Yes. Thank you. I think I didn't get into detail of what exactly you have available for agricultural risk management purposes. We identified two kinds of information. One of them is data, and the other is early warning systems. There are early warnings. Those data are used by those that have the capacity to interpret the data, analyze it, and reach conclusions about different risks. However, sometimes farmers are better equipped with some kind of simple messages that tells you exactly what are the main risks that they might be facing in the near term, in the medium term, and perhaps in the following years. And that requires a different kind of information presentation. The data, you always have the data available for your analysis, and that can be used by extension services or by more advanced and complex businesses. But perhaps farmers they need the more simple messages that are based on the processing and analysis of the data. So we identify these two sources of information, and that requires different channels, dissemination channels. And those have to go hand in hand, and they're complementary. Okay, so you want to have these early warning systems, but at the same time, you want to provide the data that are behind, the metadata that are behind this, the early warnings. And so there are different levels of information that can be provided, and they're all useful and required.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alberto. I'm going to take a minute to invite some of our other speakers from PARM to ask any questions right now if they have any, and otherwise I can follow up with some questions.
Yes, I have a question which is linking a bit, that's Jesus talking. Jesus
great, Jesus. Yeah, please, you have the floor.
Sorry, Rebecca. Yes. So linking a bit the two presentations, from the study, Alberto, your study is clear that there is two areas in which the information system seems to be particularly weak, and you have mentioned particularly plant health and the cost of animal diseases. And when you look at what has been the comments from Agnes, it seems also that whenever you get into the access to this information, also the way this information is accessed is normally through extension services which are very weak. We're talking here in the case of Uganda, which makes maybe the area in which clearly it's not only that the information systems are weak, also that the accessibility is very weak at the same time. And I was trying to figure it out, and first from Alberto, maybe also Agnes have also some ideas. Why is that the case? Is it really because this information is particularly difficult to gather or to collect, or there are other specific reasons related also with institutional arrangements, with the need of the way the information on diseases is managed is always very cautious because of legal and trade implications, or any other reason why this is the case, and what can be done to improve this circumstance?
Agnes, do you want to respond?
Agnes was on mute. Agnes, just start again because you were on mute for a second.
Okay, I think let's start with animal diseases. The way our institutions are arranged, we have a decentralized governance system where the districts are kind of semi-autonomous from the center. Now, the district agriculture staff has to report to the district before reporting to the parent ministry, Ministry of Agriculture. And the districts know that if they have a disease outbreak, for instance, foot and mouth disease, it means the ministry is going to put a ban on livestock movement in the district. And that means they will not get revenue from the livestock markets and other livestock services that the district offers. And they don't want that. So they'll hold those certain information or not relate to the parent, to the ministry. And because that information is not relayed, the farmers also don't get that information. So you have also an institutional aspect to it, and the fear that goes with announcing some diseases. So that also weakens the system. But again, our extension system is still very weak because we are going through another phase of rearranging the system, which means the technical staff is not available to the farmers, and they rely on hearsay from experienced farmers. So that means they can't access, new information on new aspects of how to handle particular diseases, and that has led to further spread of diseases and losses to the farmers.
Thank you, Agnes. We have a lot of questions coming in right now, okay. So maybe it'll be best for me to ask a couple at a time, and you can both respond, and you can choose to respond to one or both. From Gabrielle Palms, we have a question about the cost. He's asking if you have analyzed the cost of each system. So that's probably a question for you, Alberto. And then I'll ask another question as well. So Wagayahu, pardon my pronunciation, would like to know about the capacity to generate localized climate information and the capacity of the extension system to make use of this information. So maybe take a couple minutes to answer those questions, and then we have a few more after that. And Alberto or Agnes, if you need me to repeat the question, feel free to ask.
Okay, so the system, we're going to be reading the questions in the chat, or?
You can read them there. I just asked the first two that I found. So the first one was asking about whether you have analyzed the cost of each system or not. And then the second one was about generating localized climate information and asking about the capacity of the extension system to make use of that climate information.
Okay, with regards to the cost of the information system, we didn't do any study on that. It was not included in the study, and I think it very much varies on the block of information you want to look at. So this is something that we didn't look at it in detail, so we can't really say much about the cost of information systems. Let me just say one example that it's a good example, and it's agricultural market system that I said it was set up in Ethiopia a couple of years ago. It's been very successful, and it's perhaps one of the flagships of in African agriculture, and it's been really very useful. I guess the economics of that is it provides very valuable information on some of the most important commodities of the country, and apparently some services have been defined and developed based on the information that is provided there. But I don't know exactly what the costs are. In terms of to what extent you can get information systems that can gather, analyze, collect, and process data that originates in the local areas. We've seen some examples also in which, for example, some small villages or in most provinces, prices of the most important commodities are reported in the system, and that can be really developed quite easily. So my view is that for some blocks the information can be gathered quite easily. For the case of plants and animal diseases, plant health and animal disease, that's much more difficult because you really need to get a long series of data that allows you to have some information about the pests and diseases that have been going on in all areas, and to get an ecology and behavior of those pests and diseases is quite difficult. So even though you could have some data, it's not always easy to have a continuity in terms of the data and process that data. You really need to have a lot of information and scientific knowledge to have some information system on data that can be really allow farmers to anticipate the appearance or the breakup of a disease.
Great, Alberto. Thank you for that response. And Agnes, I'm going to give you a chance to also weigh in if you like. Agnes? Okay, so I'm not sure if Agnes, I think she may be having an issue with her sound.
Yeah.
Oh, Agnes, are you there? Okay.
Question on the capacity to generate localized climate information. The capacity to generate localized climate information.
Agnes, do you mind repeating what you just said? It was just a little bit choppy.
On the capacity to generate localized climate information. That one is rather limited because the meteorological infrastructure is very poor. And so we depend on a I think we're operating at less than 40% capacity nationally. And some regions don't even have meteorological stations. So that is a big problem. So climate information is very generalized. But the extension system is able to use the information when provided because the meteorological authority periodically trains our station and production staff on how to utilize the information. And we also help them on how to interpret information for the agriculture sector.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Agnes. So we have quite a few more questions, so I'm going to jump right into them. I think I'll give you 2 questions again this time. So Tim is asking if you have any insights as to which extent financial institutions use available information in agricultural lending. And then he's asking if there are any tools available to combine different data sources. So that's the question from Tim, and you can see that on the side, and I'm happy to repeat it. And then Gabriel is asking if you have any good examples of ICT in disseminating information and in gathering information. So I'll leave you with those questions to start, and Alberto or Agnes, feel free to jump in.
Okay, with respect to remarkable examples of ICT in disseminated information, there are at least 2 of them come to my mind that were identified in Ethiopia. I think they're related to the use of insurance provided through means of smart telephones, and farmers can contract them, and they're really interesting ways to develop systems that can be used even in the most remote location, and these systems are based on information and data that is gathered and collected using mobiles and different telematics systems. I didn't hear exactly about the second question, so if you can repeat it, I will perhaps try to answer it.
Sure. So let me just scroll back up. So the first question was if you have any insights as to which extent, to the extent that financial institutions are using the available information that you have uncovered using your study, and if they're using that in agricultural lending. And then he's asking if there are any tools available to combine different data sources. So maybe you have insight into what data sources he might be referring to. And that's a question from Tim.
Okay. I think in Ethiopia there are very good, interesting experiences that are now commercially offered in the country, and they're really some financial institutions are behind it. It has some of them have very good technology base, and there's some private sector that have been developing, and there are a few examples. I'm not aware of some others in the other countries, but I think Ethiopia you can see some financial institutions behind and investing in these services that farmers are purchasing for their own value and for running the farms.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alberto. Agnes, do you have anything to add on either of those questions?
We've had a pilot project on using climate information for insurance purposes, and I think so far the results looked promising in parts of the dry region, and it looks like it's very much likely to be scaled up. So I think that's likely to work quite well. And on combining different data sources, we are developing an integrated, the only system that we have that combines different data sources is the National Integrated Early Warning System. But that one is still in the works, and it's supposed to pull together all the different sources purposely to issue early warning for different parts of the country and nationally, but at district and national level. So that's their long-term plan.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Very briefly stepping in on this specific topic, because I think there is a lot of things going on this area of financial institutions that are taking the lead to use new technologies to combine different sources of information and provide services to farmers. And just as an example, because very often those are just initiatives that are starting and they need to grow in the future, but we are working particularly in Uganda with Feed Uganda, a financial institution, and with agro-risk analyzer in order to combine information from different sources, including prices, weather, but also diseases, and also with an instrument that will analyze and combine in order to make an assessment of the risk, both for farm level and also for financial institutions so that they can take decisions. So there are a lot of things going on this area. I know financial institutions are using this information more and more.
Great. Thank you, Jesus and Agnes and Alberto for your answers on that question. We have about 6 minutes left, and we have a few more questions. So let's see how many we can answer. We have a question from Colin, and he's asking, his question is, how to cope with the diversity of information needed by farmers, how to provide information across all the areas farmers need to make the best possible decisions. And then he's asking if can information be linked, for example, price data with climate data? That's a question from Colin.
Okay, that's a good question. For some areas, I'm looking here at the price data. We found for some countries, governments collecting data of some commodities that are relevant for the agricultural economy, but perhaps they're not so relevant for some rural areas that rely for feeding themselves on very specific species and that are traded in very local markets. And this was identified, for example, in Ethiopia again, where some different institutions in the government collected different information, and not all of them were relevant for food security concerns in some areas of the country. So I think it is important to make sure that not only the main commodities or the main products are collected, but also some of the species and products that are traded in very local markets that are relevant to the populations that they live there. So right now, great effort is being made to expand and to broaden the scope of the information. Also, that applies also to different prices over the value chain. That's also essential, because some prices are you can have a price for the capital of the main commodity, but the price of the same commodity in the villages might be very, very different. So it's essential that the price of those commodities are collected at the different stages in the value chain. With respect to the linkage between price data and climate data, there are some initiatives in some countries where there's been a connection and some modeling efforts to connect the climate data and price data. Of course, for that you really have to have a good modeling approach, so that you can base the causality based on models that are sufficiently calibrated and that can provide you with inference that is reliable enough.
Thank you, Alberto. Agnes, do you want to weigh in on that question?
For the Uganda experience, to meet the diversity of information that farmers need, what we are aiming at now is training the extension staff in such a manner that they can provide all the information the farmer needs. They're going to be the main contacts for the farmer. So they'll go through specialized training to be able to give information on the weather, and they should know where to get it, because they can get that from meteorological authority. They'll be well trained in plant health. They'll be well trained in agronomy. They'll be well trained on how to access information for price if the farmers need it. So the extension officer will be holistic in his knowledge to be able to pass that on to the farmer.
Fantastic. And everyone, we have about 2 minutes left, so I'd like to see if we can answer this last question in maybe a minute, and then I'm going to give the floor to Jesus to give you information on a workshop that's approaching. So the last question I'm going to give to the panelists is from, who is this from? I got it privately from Adam, and he's asking if you see a disconnect between the focus of peer-reviewed research and how farmers think, or how policymakers are trying to think about risk, for example, more holistically. And he asks, what can be done about this?
Okay, I think all governments are really concerned about the area of risk management, and they're aware of the need to have first good sound information systems. There's one missing element in all of this. You really need to have good data to have good analysis, and that's the basic part of the study was to assess the quality of the information systems and the quality of the data that is provided and offered in the information system. So I think it's essential here that countries take seriously their role of collecting data, processing the data, and disseminating the data. Without that, it's going to be really hard for anyone to develop services that are useful for risk management and to produce reports and information that can be that can be useful for the farmers. So I think this is what we're trying to identify and assess in the study: the quality of the information systems and the way to improve them.
Fantastic. So we are right on the half an hour. Agnes, I want to give you a chance to give a few final words. So if you can stick around for maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, everybody, we will be wrapping up the presentation shortly. Agnes, you have the floor.
Okay, in as much as we highlight that agricultural risk management is important, information systems is important for risk management, it's also important to note that, as Alberto said, it's the data that really informs the policy, and the farmers will kind of implement that policy. But that data needs to be collected, so we need a proper data collection system right from the lowest administration level, from the farmer level, upwards to feed policy. But policy is grounded on real data and can actually be useful to the farmers.
Thank you so much, Agnes. And Jesus, I'm going to give you the floor to mention your workshop, and then I'll wrap up with a couple of details for the participants. Go ahead, Jesus. Oh, you're on mute. You should be able to speak now. Jesus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I will be very brief, as just to make you know, as I have said at the beginning, there is a workshop on information systems, applications and innovations for risk management that you can find the whole details of the workshop in our website, p4arm.org, as you can find it easily. And basically, the idea is there will be a presentation of this study at that time, but also broadening the discussion to all the issues related with the accessibility and the gathering of information for agricultural risk management, with also very interesting discussion on specific examples that will be brought from the ground, from very big early warning systems from international organizations to very small initiatives from small private initiatives from the ground. There will be any outcome on information will be put in the website, and you will be able to follow after the workshop. I just want to finalize to thank you participants, and thank you the World Bank and PARM for the opportunity for doing this webinar with you.
Thank you so much, Jesus, and I want to second that. Thank you to the speakers for a truly fantastic presentation. I have linked the study in both the chat and the Q&A box. So if you navigate to that side, that part of the WebEx window, you should be able to see a link to the report. We thank you for your participation. Again, we did record this presentation, and we will be following up with a recording in an email to all the participants and all of those participants that also did not attend. So if you joined late, you should be able to access that presentation in the next week or so. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email, and I'll put my email in the window. We hope you have a great rest of the day and a great weekend, and we'll be seeing you on our next webinars, hopefully in the next month or so. Take care, and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.